I'd always been a sucker for antiques. There's something magical about the way old things carry the weight of their stories. So when I found a Craigslist ad for an estate sale featuring rare antiques at unbeatable prices, my curiosity was piqued. The ad promised a collection of items from an old Victorian house, recently inherited by a distant relative with no interest in them. It sounded perfect. The contact was a man named Thomas, who assured me over the phone that the sale would be worth my while. He explained that the house was a bit out of the way, nestled in a quiet corner of the countryside. I hesitated for a moment, but Thomas's friendly demeanor and the promise of rare finds pushed me to agree. We set the appointment for Saturday at 5 p.m. Saturday arrived, and I found myself driving through winding country roads, the sun beginning its descent. The directions led me to an old, decrepit Victorian house, surrounded by overgrown grass and towering trees that cast long shadows. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Still, my excitement over the potential treasures inside outweighed my caution. Thomas greeted me at the door, a middle-aged man with a welcoming smile and a soft voice. He ushered me inside, where the air smelled of dust and old wood. The interior was dimly lit, with light filtering through the heavy drapes. Antiques of all kinds filled the rooms: ornate mirrors, vintage furniture, ancient clocks, and shelves full of trinkets. "Feel free to look around," Thomas said, gesturing towards the collection. "If you see anything you like, let me know." I wandered from room to room, admiring the craftsmanship of each piece. There was something almost surreal about the experience. I found an old music box, its intricate design catching my eye. I picked it up and turned the small key. The melody it played was hauntingly beautiful, filling the otherwise silent house. "That's a lovely piece," Thomas commented from behind me, making me jump slightly. "It's yours for $50. A bargain, I thought, and agreed to the price. We continued our tour, with me picking out a few more items: a vintage lamp, an old painting, and a set of porcelain figurines. Thomas was attentive, always nearby but never intrusive. I felt oddly at ease despite the eerie atmosphere. It wasn't until we reached the attic that things took a turn. Thomas hesitated before opening the door, his cheerful demeanor faltering for a split second. The attic was cluttered with old furniture covered in white sheets, boxes piled high, and a single naked bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting long shadows. "I think I'll pass on the attic," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Are you sure?" Thomas pressed. "There are some truly unique items up here." Reluctantly, I followed him inside. The moment I stepped over the threshold, I felt a shift in the air, an oppressive, heavy feeling. I glanced around, trying to pinpoint the source of my unease. That's when I noticed the old trunk in the corner, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes. It looked ancient, with rusted hinges and strange symbols carved into the wood. "What's in there?" I asked, pointing to the trunk. Thomas's expression darkened. "Just some old family heirlooms, nothing of interest." But I was already moving towards it, my curiosity getting the better of me. As I approached, the air seemed to grow colder. I reached out and touched the lid, feeling an icy chill seeping through the wood. Before I could lift it, Thomas grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "I wouldn't open that if I were you," he said, his voice low and serious. "Why not?" I challenged, trying to pull away. "It's not for sale," he replied, releasing my arm but blocking my path to the trunk. I backed away, unsettled by the change in his demeanor. The friendly antiques dealer was gone, replaced by someone I didn't quite recognize. I decided it was time to leave. "I think I have enough," I said, forcing a smile. "Let's settle up." Thomas nodded, his smile returning but not reaching his eyes. We made our way back downstairs, where I paid for my chosen items. As he helped me load them into my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd narrowly avoided something sinister. Driving away, I glanced back at the house, its dark silhouette standing against the twilight sky. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I put distance between us. I never did find out what was in that trunk, and maybe that's for the best. A word of advice. Next time you're tempted by an unbelievable deal on Craigslist, remember, some treasures are better left undiscovered. When I first moved to New York City, finding a decent place to live was a nightmare. After a few weeks of searching and dealing with scammers, I stumbled upon a Craigslist ad that seemed like a dream come true. A spacious 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, reasonably priced, and with a potential roommate named Sarah who sounded friendly and down to earth. The listing had photos of a clean, well-lit apartment with modern furnishings. It seemed too good to be true, but I was desperate and decided to take a chance. I contacted Sarah, and we arranged to meet at a cafe near the apartment. She was in her late 20s, with a warm smile and an easygoing demeanor. We hit it off immediately, chatting about our jobs, interests, and why we both ended up in NYC. After coffee, she took me to see the apartment. It was just as nice as the photos had shown. I couldn't believe my luck. We agreed that I would move in the following week. Sarah seemed genuinely excited to have me as a roommate, and I felt the same. On moving day, everything went smoothly. Sarah even helped me carry boxes up the 3 flights of stairs. By the evening, I was unpacked and settled into my new room. The first couple of weeks were great. Sarah and I got along well, and it felt like we had been friends for years. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, and even started a small herb garden on the windowsill. But then, things started to get strange. One night, I came home late from work to find the apartment completely dark. Usually, Sarah would leave a light on for me if she knew I was coming home late. I called out her name, but there was no answer. I assumed she had gone out and didn't think much of it. The next morning, Sarah was unusually quiet and distant. When I asked if everything was okay, she just nodded and mumbled something about having a bad night. Over the next few days, her behavior grew increasingly erratic. She would disappear for hours without explanation and became increasingly jumpy and paranoid. I often found her staring out the window as if she was expecting someone or something. One evening, I found her in the living room, frantically packing a suitcase. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I have to go. I can't stay here any longer." "What's going on?" I asked, trying to understand her sudden urgency. "I can't explain," she replied, shaking her head. "Just be careful. Don't trust anyone." And with that, she left. I stood there in shock, watching her walk out the door. I tried calling her later, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of Sarah. I contacted the landlord, who told me that Sarah had given notice and paid her share of the rent for the next month. Living alone in the apartment felt eerie. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Strange noises started keeping me up at night, creaking floors, whispers, and even the occasional thud. At first, I chalked it up to an old building settling, but it got progressively worse. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. My heart raced as I grabbed a baseball bat from under my bed and crept towards the door. The hallway was empty, but the feeling of being watched was palpable. I checked every room, every closet, and even under the beds, but found nothing. I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. Then I found the letter. It was hidden in a drawer in Sarah's room, addressed to "Whoever finds this." My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter explained that Sarah had discovered something sinister about the apartment. According to her, the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, and there were rumors of others before him. She had started seeing and hearing things, just like I had been, and became convinced that something malevolent was in the apartment. The letter ended with a chilling warning: leave before it's too late. I didn't need to be told twice. I packed my belongings that night and left, not even caring about getting my deposit back. As I drove away, I glanced back at the building, its dark windows staring back at me like hollow eyes. I found another place to live, far from Brooklyn, and tried to put the experience behind me. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear those whispers and footsteps in my dreams, reminding me of the nightmare I narrowly escaped. Scrolling through Craigslist one evening, I found a listing that piqued my interest: a vintage guitar for sale, listed at a fraction of its market value. As an avid guitarist and collector, I couldn't resist. The ad mentioned the guitar was in pristine condition, previously owned by a renowned local musician who had recently passed away. I immediately contacted the seller, a man named Mark, who responded quickly and suggested we meet at a nearby park to make the exchange. We agreed on 8 p.m. the next day. The park was well lit and usually busy, which made me feel more comfortable about meeting a stranger. Mark described himself as a tall man in his 40s, with a beard and wearing a leather jacket. He also mentioned he would be driving a white van. The next evening, I arrived at the park a little early, eager to see the guitar. True to his word, Mark was there, leaning against a white van, guitar case in hand. He greeted me warmly and opened the case, revealing a beautiful vintage Gibson guitar. It was exactly as described, and I couldn't believe my luck. We chatted for a bit about music and the guitar's history. Mark seemed knowledgeable and friendly, putting me at ease. After a few minutes, we made the exchange. I handed him the cash and he passed me the guitar. Just as I was about to leave, he asked if I could help him with something. "Hey, could you give me a hand with a couple of boxes in the back of my van? I need to drop them off at a friend's place nearby, and they're too heavy for me to lift alone," he said with a sheepish smile. Every instinct screamed at me to say no, but I didn't want to seem rude or ungrateful. Plus, he had been friendly and open throughout our interaction. Hesitantly, I agreed. He opened the van's back doors, revealing several large boxes. "Thanks, man. I really appreciate it," he said, climbing into the van to grab one end of a box. I stepped closer to help, but as soon as I was within reach, I felt a sharp pain in my neck. My vision blurred, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a dimly lit basement, my hands and feet bound with duct tape. Panic set in as I struggled to remember how I got there. The last thing I remembered was helping Mark with the boxes. My heart pounded in my chest as I took in my surroundings. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, boxes, and various tools. It smelled of damp concrete and rust. I heard footsteps above me, and a door creaked open. Mark appeared at the top of the stairs, a sinister smile on his face. He slowly descended, holding a knife. "You're awake," he said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Don't bother screaming. No one will hear you down here." Fear gripped me. "What do you want?" I managed to croak, my throat dry and voice shaking. Mark laughed softly. "It's not about what I want. It's about what I need. You see, people like you, who trust too easily, are perfect for my endeavors." He moved closer, and I could see the crazed look in his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, desperate to stall him, to think of a way out. Mark paused, tilting his head as if considering the question. "Because I can. Because it's fun. And because people like you never see it coming." He raised the knife and I braced myself for the worst. But just then, a loud bang echoed through the basement. Mark's expression changed to one of surprise and anger. Another bang followed, and I realized it was someone pounding on the door upstairs. "Police! Open up!" Mark cursed under his breath and backed away, his eyes darting around frantically. "We'll continue this later," he hissed, running up the stairs and slamming the basement door behind him. I heard a scuffle upstairs, followed by shouting and the unmistakable sound of a struggle. Moments later, the basement door burst open and 2 police officers rushed down, guns drawn. Relief washed over me as they cut the tape binding my wrists and ankles. "It's okay. You're safe now," one of the officers said, helping me to my feet. We received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity involving a white van in this area. Looks like we got here just in time. As they escorted me out of the basement and into the fresh night air, I couldn't stop shaking. I later learned that Mark was a wanted criminal, suspected of multiple abductions and assaults. The guitar was recovered, along with several other stolen items, and I was lucky to escape with my life. That night changed me. I became more cautious, more skeptical of seemingly perfect deals, and I made a vow to never, ever let my guard down again. Because in the end, you never really know who you're dealing with on the other side of the screen. If you want to see more horror stories, check out my next video.